do I start an F-16? The question's real, I stole an F-16. Flip the master, all the lights begin to feel. I stole an F-16. Set the fuel pump, start the number 2. How do I start an F-16? The question's real, I stole an F-16. Flip the master, all the lights begin to feel. I stole an F-16. Set the fuel pump, start the number 2. I stole an F-16. Engines whining as the turbines chew. I stole an F-16. Turn the RER power on bright. I stole an F-16. Horizon centered, the line set right. I stole an F-16. Oh, watch the gauges and the needles climb. I stole an F-16. Wait till 20, it will take its time. I stole an F-16. Throttle back down to idle mark. I stole an F-16. Jet breathes deep with a rumbling spark. I stole an F-16. Unlock the gate and push it free. I stole an F-16. The bird comes alive with a roar of glee. I stole an F-16. Roll out the REL power on bright. I stole an F-16. Horizon centered, the line set right. I stole an F-16. Bolivia, way, Bolivia, Baba, Bolivia, Bolena de Shemomaro, Papi, Baba, Bolivia, way, Bolivia, Papi, Baba, Bolivia, Bolena de Shemomaro.
How do I start an A-10?
He was just a rookie trooper and he surely shook with pride. He checked all his equipment and made sure his pack was tight. He had to sit and listen to those awful engines roar. You ain't gonna jump no more. Gory, gory, what a hell of a way to die. Gory, gory, what a hell of a way to die. Gory, gory, what a hell of a way to die. He ain't gonna jump no more. Zoom, 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 zoom. Is everybody happy? Cried the sergeant looking up. Our hero feebly answered yes, and then they stood him up. He jumped into the icy blast, his static line and hook, and he ain't gonna jump no more. Gory, gory, what a hell of a way to die. Gory, gory, what a hell of a way to die. Gory, gory, what a hell of a way to die. He ain't gonna jump no more. Zoom, 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 zoom. He counted long, he counted loud, he waited for the shock. He felt the wind, he felt the cold, he felt the awful drop. The silk from his reserve spilled out and wrapped around his legs, and he ain't gonna jump no more. Gory, gory, what a hell of a way to die. Gory, gory, what a hell of a way to die. Gory, gory, what a hell of a way to die. He ain't gonna jump no more. Zoom, 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 zoom. The riser swung around his neck, connectors cracked his dome. Suspension lines were tied in knots around his skinny bones. The canopy became his shroud, he hurtled to the ground,
And he ain't gonna jump no more. Gory, gory, what a hell of a way to die. Gory, gory, what a hell of a way to die. Gory, gory, what a hell of a way to die. He ain't gonna jump no more. Zoom, 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 zoom.
For days he lived and loved and laughed kept running through his mind. He thought about the girl back home, the one he left behind. He thought about the medicos and wondered what they'd find.
And he ain't gonna jump no more. Gory, gory, what a hell of a way to die. Gory, gory, what a hell of a way to die. Gory, gory, what a hell of a way to die. He ain't gonna jump no more. Zoom, 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 zoom.
The ambulance was on the spot, the jeeps were running wild. The medics jumped and screamed with glee, rolled up their sleeves and smiled. For it had been a week or more since last a shoot had failed.
And he ain't gonna jump no more. Gory, gory, what a hell of a way to die. Gory, gory, what a hell of a way to die. Gory, gory, what a hell of a way to die. He ain't gonna jump no more. Zoom, 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 zoom.
He hit the ground, the sound was splat, his blood went spurting high. His comrades, they were heard to say, a hell of a way to die. He lay there rolling round in the welter of his gore.
And he ain't gonna jump no more. Gory, gory, what a hell of a way to die. Gory, gory, what a hell of a way to die. Gory, gory, what a hell of a way to die. He ain't gonna jump no more. There was blood upon the risers, there were brains upon the chute. Intestines were a-dangling from his paratrooper suit. He was a mess, they picked him up and poured him from his boots. And he ain't gonna jump no more. Gory, gory, what a hell of a way to die. Gory, gory, what a hell of a way.
Do you have specific bingo cards for specific days?
Yeah, absolutely. Don't you?
Oh, man. No, I just take them all at once and then, like a grandma punching out 6 different ones.
No, never. Yes, sir.
Average debate enjoyer. I do average debates and moderately enjoy them as well. On top of that, we started a podcast this week, Pentuple, myself, and Druid. Check that out. It's pretty funny. We're working on the editing and stuff still, but Sadie did a fantastic job. Other than that, I'm here to kick ass and chew bubblegum, and I'm all out of ass to kick, so I'm going to chew some bubblegum.
Yeah.
And for all the people that are on my stream that missed that fantastic opening line, yeah, which is going to be the debate championship series. We're doing Trump Central Power Grab threatens foundation of American democracy. We're muted, so y'all sure got that great entertaining opening. The rest of y'all fucked up, I guess, and by y'all I mean me. All right, so Cassell, tell us who you are and where you're from, what all that good jazz.
Cool, yeah. Thanks, Gibbs. So I'm from New York. You can find me at CastleGuardYT on Twitter or just CastleGuard on Twitch. Similarly to Tyler, love debating, like to get into politics, sports, pop culture, all that stuff, and just talk about it. Just like having good conversation with people who can hold a good conversation. So yeah, if you like that and you like kind of unbiased center-left takes, I'm the guy to follow.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Grid.
Yeah, I'm Grid One Motorsports. I am an unreasonable man. That is the name of my channel. I do all kinds of things. Mostly, I do some debates. I do some interviews. We have great discussions all the time. I am not center of anything. I am on the right. I'm a constitutional conservative, and I'm here to judge and judge well.
Fantastic. I am excited. And last but certainly not least, Leafy. Thanks for stepping up, being a last minute fill in. Appreciate it. Always coming through the clutch.
No problem.
Tell us who you are, what you do.
Your boy Lethe Water Kai on all platforms. I mostly just hang out and talk to people, and we'll every now and again get into a debate. I guess you'd call me a regular run-of-the-mill liberal. Anything that's not center-right or to the right of that. And yeah, I just here to support Gibbs.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. All right. So I gave you all a rundown. For those of y'all that don't know, we're going to do 7-minute openings, and then we'll get to it, and it's going to be exciting stuff. If I interrupt, I'm going to be interrupting for, monetary reasons or for clarification questions, and the judges will get a chance to ask questions at several points throughout this. Are we ready? Everybody here? All right.
Ready.
Fantastic. Let me just pull up my stopwatch, and we'll be good to go. Perfect. All right. Whenever you're ready, Cassell, go ahead and start us off. You got 7 minutes.
Awesome. So in order to threaten the foundations of democracy, which is the title of this debate, how Trump's central power grab threatens the foundations of American democracy, you have to establish what those foundations are. And there are 3 important foundations that I think most people can agree to, which would be the Constitution, or aka the rule of law, separation of powers, and federalism. And Trump has threatened all 3 of these foundations in various ways through various power grabs, which has put our democracy on a shakier foundation than what it was just a year ago, all for personal gain and revenge against his political opponents. Now, Trump has ruled like an authoritarian figure surrounded by yes men and women in his cabinet, and is using the very democracy we have now to favor himself over the country, using methods that have pitted Americans against each other, which has only put more of a strain on our relationships with our families, friends, neighbors, and alike. Earlier today, federal judge indicted Letitia James, the Attorney General of New York, for alleged bank fraud and false statement charges. This was done after the fact that one of Trump's White House staff secretaries, Lindsay Halligan, was then appointed U.S. Attorney of the Eastern District of Virginia, who had no previous prosecutorial experience, and came right after forcing out the previous Trump-appointed Eastern District Attorney Eric Siebert for not pursuing charges against Letitia James. Halligan was even questioned by the Attorney General and Deputy Attorney General for lacking the experience before Trump appointed her anyway to go after his political opponents. Just yesterday, Stephen Miller went on CNN saying that President Trump had plenary authority when it comes to deploying the National Guard to Chicago under Title 10 of the U.S. Code, which is not only a wrong interpretation of Title 10 itself, but extremely concerning that the President's Chief of Staff has advised him as such, which would grant him absolute power with no limitations on what he can do, which is exactly what the country was founded on repudiating, and is exactly what the Constitution tries to prevent from happening. 2 days ago, when addressing protesters in Portland for burning the American flag, Trump said he was implementing a 1-year penalty for doing so, and said he took the freedom of speech away because burning the flag agitates and irritates crowds. The Supreme Court has already settled this issue of flag burning already. Justice Scalia writing in Texas v. Johnson that the government cannot ban the expression of an idea just because others find it offensive. And symbolic protest is protected speech, and Trump is now using his powers as president to attack that fundamental right, with his own Attorney General Pam Bondi on the record claiming that there is, quote, free speech and hate speech, and the government will target anybody who engages in hate speech. And they will execute any American that they deem Antifa over the weekend during the Chicago protests. So free speech was even under further attack when Trump used a transnational crime unit of the Department of Homeland Security to secretly target campus protesters earlier last year, leading to a Tufts University student to be arrested for writing an op-ed article saying that the school should divest from companies tied to Israel, and was recently ruled blatantly unconstitutional by a U.S. district judge. Trump's also been militarizing law enforcement, trying to deploy the National Guard into Portland and Chicago, deeming them unsafe cities, and trying to cite the Insurrection Act as his reasoning. But according to local and state officials in the states of Illinois and in Oregon, police chiefs and citizens of both cities, nobody is asking for this type of enforcement, and it's not legal to do so. Back in 2020, Trump sent the National Guard into Portland to protect federal lands and properties, which was a debatable use by legal scholars, but something that a lot of legal scholars said was constitutional. But citing the Insurrection Act to gather up protesters where no insurrection is even happening does not seem constitutional. Trump called for the mayor of Chicago to be jailed for not addressing crime in the city. Said on Truth Social earlier yesterday that Connecticut Senator Richard Blumenthal should be jailed and sitting in prison for lying about his past deployment in Vietnam, calling for Democrats to be handled like gnats on their shoulders and on our shoulders, and many, many other incendiary things. But it's not just governmental employees or politicians, it's private companies and private citizens who are under attack as well. Recently, Trump has pressured private companies and single employees through litigation, public shaming, and regulatory oversight in order to get what he wants. And recently, the Trump admin forced Apple to take down an app that posted locations of ICE agents in public areas after Pam Bondi had direct talks with the company to take the app down. But noting public locations to inform folks of where ICE is located is not a crime, and anybody actually committing a crime against ICE agents should be and would be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. And the app itself did not violate any crime in any way, but they were forcing Apple to take it down anyway. When it comes to media, there is an attempt under the way to use regulatory powers to censor media, which has been celebrated by the Trump administration by pulling licenses of TV stations for anybody who didn't take Jimmy Kimmel off the air, and using its regulatory powers of licensing and mergers to make clear that they can own media if it propagates Trump's narratives and suppresses criticism. Lastly, rigging the rules and slowing dissent is a hallmark of authoritarianism and a sign of a faltering democracy. Claiming that the 2020 election was rigged, firing the head of BLS for reporting bad jobs numbers, and suing pollsters for bad polling numbers, all to point out that folks are against him in the country when things don't go his way. But where it actually becomes unconstitutional is threatening the freedom of the press. And recently, the Defense Department sent reporters a memo saying that they'd be required to sign a document acknowledging that they would not disclose either classified or unclassified information that is not formally authorized for publication. The First Amendment prohibits the government from imposing prior restraints, i.e. government approval before speech or publication, which this clearly does. So overall, democracies don't die overnight, and right now, our democracy isn't dead, but it's hard to deny that it is under threat due to the actions of the Trump administration. My opponent will say things like what Trump is doing is legal. If they aren't legal, then the courts would overturn them. But Trump, as we all know, owns the Supreme Court with a majority of conservatives that he appointed and supports, and recently ruled in 2024 in Trump v. the United States that when he was president, he had absolute immunity for official acts of the presidency. And while he looks to replace all judges he can with loyalists, there's no reason to believe that the courts won't become more amenable to Trump and people Trump supports in the future. Trump's DOJ is not shy about who they're going after and why. Trump even publicly saying that he's denying funding to blue states and canceling federal grants for green energy projects because, quote, they voted for the other party. Is threatening free speech and press a foundation that has been tested by this administration? Absolutely. Have the separations of powers been tested under this administration by controlling government spending and power of the purse by withholding funding or by firing district judges? Definitely. And has federalism been tested by Trump deploying the National Guard into U.S. cities to go after protesters, advocating for what they believe is right, or threatening state university funding and their students based on their political views? Definitely.
Time. All right, good, nice. Right at, I got a little bit over, like about 3 seconds over, so I'll give Tyler 3 seconds grace. All right, and yes, Sam, we are doing rate debates or judges. try to be impartial. Pick whoever did the best case. Yeah, that's what we do here. Said chat. Same thing to y'all. We're gonna pick who won the debate on points, however that may be. Go ahead, Tyler. Go ahead.
All right. This prompt is Trump's central power grab threatens the foundations of American democracy, and this is just more political, partisan, fad faith tactics as usual. The same thing we've been seeing against Trump since day one. He's a fascist, going to take over the country, and anyone that does the same exact things as him is actually justified in doing so. We saw this just play out recently with gerrymandering. Democrats gerrymandering. Absolutely, they're standing up to fascism, even though California was significantly more gerrymandered than Texas in the first place. So, first, my argument is going to take a look at a lot of the common claims that we hear, but most of them he mentioned. We talked about Trump ignoring the courts, Trump attacking the cartel, Trump attacking Iran, Trump deporting people, stripping student visas. We didn't actually talk about tariffs and all the firing so much. Sending troops to city, all these things. I heard a claim that sending troops to city was illegal, but this went to the Ninth Circuit about 2 weeks ago. And they said that Trump was actually completely in his right and gave legal precedent as to why he was in his right to do this. So to say it's illegal is just kind of unfounded in the law. He's allowed to A, back up his federal troops, and B, go in after groups that are deemed as terrorist groups. So I'm going to show you that a lot of these claims are flat out not true, or some of them are perfectly fine, but at the end of the day, I'm going to show you that the other party has been using the exact same tactics and nobody cared. It's just one-sided pearl clutching and pretending democracy is going to be over. The same things we heard all through Trump's first term that never came true. So going from there, I'm going to talk about the Article 2 right of the president to interpret laws. As much as you hate it, Joe Biden had the right to interpret the HEROES Act and the SAVE Act and the Higher Education Act to try to get rid of student loans. So the fact that the courts shut it down, it's the court's job to shut it down once Congress defines it as much as they're going to. So it's Congress's job to define the law. If the law is too stringent, the executive gets to interpret it, and then the judicial branch gets to say whether or not he went over his merit in these actions. So when this process plays out exactly as intended, just to say with zero proof that he owns the Supreme Court and the Supreme Court is corrupt because they somewhat share a similar ideology to him is about as dishonest as one can be. He's winning legal battles, and it's some kind of fallacy. I don't know which one specifically it is, to ignore what they're actually saying in law, what they're actually saying in their rulings, and just say, well, I mean, Trump's 21-0 in the Supreme Court because he owns them. Where's the proof of that? It's a baseless claim, and it has to boil down to corruption at some level to explain away why he's been right every single time on the Supreme Court level. It has to be something other than he's actually right, because then you'd have to admit that you're wrong. So going into this, we're going to see there's two different arguments I tend to see, and it's usually either A, the double standard. It's different when my side does it. It's always for the right reasons. It's always better justified, and it's not actually hurting democracy in any way. And then we're also going to see the second, which is I lost my second. The whataboutism claim. We're not allowed to talk about whataboutism. Everything's about, you can't bring up whataboutism. What whataboutism means when you're talking about the law is legal precedent. What whataboutism means when you're talking about politics is political precedent. When a previous administration goes through something, when a previous legal case covers something, that's how it is moving forward. So we see whataboutism as a common deflection for a lot of the things I'm going to be bringing up tonight. And the reason being is because that's the only way that it gets deflected. If you actually listen to the arguments on merit and see that the other side is equally as guilty, if not more guilty, but nobody was talking about democracy eroding, in fact that they were being cheered on as the saviors of democracy, you realize that this argument is completely without merit. It's completely without teeth. So we're going to go into examples of like the Democrats' cries of fascism. If they actually believed that they were fascism, why were they funding tens of millions of dollars into GOP candidates in 2022 to try to get the easiest opponent? Why did Kamala Harris just say, oh, we'll get them next time, guys, great job, everybody, when she lost? Like, they're LARPing fascism, and then as soon as that's out the window, the election's over, there's no need to bump up the rhetoric to that degree. It's like, oh yeah, fascism, we'll get them in the next election, because they know better. They know it's hyperbole. So I don't know. I see a lot of tactics in the essence of when you criticize a Democrat, you always be talking about somebody in office of a high power. We saw this argument a lot with election denial and Stacey Abrams, but she wasn't the president, blah, blah, blah. It's Dunning-Kruger. The Republicans are always a blob of groupthink. We're going to probably see that tonight as well, where one says something, Stephen Miller says something on the news, and now that's suddenly the legal theory that the administration is using moving forward. I heard three foundations in the introduction. Federalism, which is something that the GOP seemingly is trying to uphold more. Separation of powers, which I'd argue that the powers Trump's been trying to clutch at are presidential powers in the Constitution. We can go over emoluments. We can go over not spending all the dollars that Congress has allocated to you, but these are things that presidents have done in the past. They're all precedented. And then the foundations for democracy as well. I heard these all brought up, but then when I was listening to Reasons How, instead I got one person said this, and one person said this, and one person said this. Saying things in a news interview and actual policy and what the administration does are two completely different things. So I also heard in your introduction brought up, you're talking about Seattle. Well, in Seattle in 2020, there was an autonomous zone of 2 blocks of land that was completely taken over by anti-American protesters, and they forced the U.S. government's authority out of it. They wouldn't let police in. They wouldn't let anybody with any sort of supervision over the city in. And we saw crime spike in that area because of these. It was basically unpoliced completely and totally. They were also rioting for months. They were attacking federal buildings. They were attacking state buildings. And Trump was vindicated in sending in the National Guard. On top of that, in California, Gavin Newsom took him to court. We just saw 2 weeks ago the ruling show that he was vindicated. He has the right to send people in. The real problem is, why are we shaming federal law enforcement that's doing exactly what their job is, which is removing illegal immigrants from the country? Why is it okay to announce where they are, to point them out, when attacks against them have skyrocketed 1,000 times what they were last year? When there's been multiple mass shootings now at ICE facilities, we're saying that the police are the violent ones, and we should support the people that are protesting on behalf of people in the country illegally that should be deported. That to me is a complete inverse, and at the end of the day is actually eroding our fabric while pretending to be the ones holding it up. So we'll get into a lot of these details after.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much. All right, y'all got about 7 minutes more now, and then we're going to go to the judges for some questions. So, all right, go ahead and fight. Oh, 1 point of order, little trivia. We looked up his record in the interim, 4-4. So we'll see if Tyler's on the good end of the gatekeeping or bad end of the gatekeeping today. No pressure. No pressure. All right, fight.
All right, so you brought up in your introduction Trump was ignoring the Supreme Court. And since I'm attacking tonight, well, the separation of powers, essentially, that he was not adhering to the judicial branch, maybe not particularly the Supreme Court when you were talking about the separation of power. The only time this has been brought up was in the Garcia case when he was told he had to facilitate his return. He was returned to the United States. He's been through now about 12 steps of judicial proceedings, so he got his due process, and he's going to be deported probably to Uganda, if not a country, Eswatini, I don't know how to say that. But he's going to one of those 2 countries now because he got his due process. Where on the other end, we see now 4 different district judges in hard blue Democratic areas have to be reprimanded by the Supreme Court because they're still ignoring Supreme Court rulings. The last time this happened was during civil rights, and they sent in U.S. Marshals to arrest them because they were upholding Supreme Court-backed rulings against discrimination. Do you just think that the SCOTUS being ignored by district courts is a big deal? And if so, why is that not eroding democracy when Trump is abided by the Supreme Court ruling every time?
So I don't think I mentioned anything about Trump ignoring the Supreme Court rulings in my opening statement. I can definitely see people talk about that. And I think before I address your point, I was very careful with a lot of what I wrote here because people do use hyperbole when describing Trump and the Trump presidency or calling him a fascist or a dictator. I definitely didn't want to use those words purposefully because I know the way that they carry. And I'm not calling Trump a fascist either here. Authoritarian is different, but I also think it's justified in this case. So just to clear that up. But in terms of the courts themselves, I don't I didn't say that he was trying to ignore Supreme Court orders in this case of Abreu Garcia. But I do think that Trump has definitely used his public appearances to go after people on the court who may make a bad judgment or write a bad dissent for something that he doesn't like. And I think presidents should be staying out of these matters. You didn't have previous presidents doing this up before, and I think Trump likes to get in the middle of these things when we have those separations of powers for a reason, similarly to how he gets involved with Federal Reserve decisions and trying to oust Jay Powell as well, even though that's a separate argument. But he gets involved with these things, and there's a reason why these are separated and why it was framed that way in the Constitution. I think it's harmful. And your point to these district judges ignoring the Supreme Court, again, I think you mentioned whataboutism before. We're not talking about what Democrats did before, but even if we did, I'm not agreeing with those things either. The problem with Trump is that what he's doing in this term specifically, the first term, I'm not even talking about the first term, but this term specifically, is that he is ramping up what he's able to do more than any other time during his first term. We've already seen it within the first few months, and now it's going to be a year in January. So we're going to approach a year, and he has done more to try to dismantle the democracy than at any point in his first term. And I think that's the real problem. It's the amount of ramping up that he's doing that has brought a lot of attention in the press and why a lot of people are concerned.
Okay, well, you brought up 3 pillars, and I'm trying to attack those 3 pillars. So when I brought up separation of powers, I did correct it. So you said you didn't disagree with Scody. But the separation of powers is showing he's been agreeing with the court's rulings when those rulings finally are ultimately completely concluded. If a district court makes a ruling, that gets appealed, he continues to do action until it's pushed up to the highest courts and finished, or an appeals court finishes with it. So he has been actually abiding by the judiciary. So I'm just wondering where the separation of powers complaint comes from, and it seems like for that, and I was talking about federalism in my opening, the only complaint he brought up for federalism was that he's sending the National Guard in, but we have the Ninth Circuit just last week or 2 weeks ago saying Trump was in the right to do that, and previous examples of us doing it during civil rights as well, which I'm sure everybody here would agree that that's perfectly fine to do. If somebody's ignoring civil rights and using the state to discriminate against people that aren't white, we should see the federal government go in and correct that. Well, in this instance, we saw the same thing. We saw people being attacked. We saw attacks against ICE skyrocketing. He was allowed to send troops in to guard them, to protect ICE and federal buildings. It was, I just don't see the separation of powers.
Let's address the separation of powers first, being tested under this administration. I mentioned 2 things. By controlling government spending and the power of the purse, by withholding funding, and also by firing district judges. I think we can agree that he fired the Eastern District Judge in Virginia because he wasn't going after Letitia James and James Comey, right? That's why he appointed Lindsey Halligan to that position. I don't think is that debatable?
No, but you're talking about the separation of powers. When you have these district judges, those are put in by the administration. Those aren't people that work for the DOJ.
But why was she fired?
Why was
he fired?
Well, I mean, it doesn't. We're talking about separation of powers. You're talking about somebody within his own branch of power as your example. So even if they were fired for the most heinous of reasons, that's somebody he has the direct authority to fire. That's not
about 2 minutes for the other judges, everybody. All right, go ahead.
The point of the judge. Well, so we have to so now we're saying that the president can fire judges that he disagrees with solely because they're not going after their political opponents. I think that's definitely a threat to democracy.
Only if they're in the executive branch. So all immigration judges, for instance, all immigration courts are not Article 3, they're Article 2. They're under the executive branch. They're employees of the DOJ. So if they say, hey, employee of the DOJ, go after this person, and they say no, they're allowed to fire that person. Absolutely, yes.
But the DOJ is in control. It's supposed to be separate from the president. The DOJ has its own authority than the president does. So I don't know how that's even being considered as something normal. The president should be staying out of DOJ. I mean, under Biden, that was an issue. People saying that he covered for Hunter Biden, right? Like, you can't have a DOJ that is in cahoots with the president himself. Otherwise, you're just going to go after political opponents all the time instead of people that are actually committing crimes.
Yeah, absolutely. There is a link there. You get to elect the head of it. You're talking about a norm in Washington, but it's not something that's actually written down anywhere. You are allowed to coordinate with your DOJ. You're allowed to ask them questions. You're allowed to say that investigations that you want to see done, You're just not allowed to. I mean, it's taboo for you to directly command them to go do a certain investigation. But we had during the Obama administration or the Biden administration, we had Biden not only saying that he wanted Merrick Garland to go after Trump faster to one of his aides, but we also have him. You said earlier that you don't see any Democrats commenting on the decisions of courts they don't like. Joe Biden was all over the place commenting about how Roe v. Wade was a mistake, how the SCOTUS is right-leaning and corrupt, and he was actually pushing a bill to pack the courts so they could overrule the Supreme Court. That, to me, is a big check on the separation of powers. Like, that, to me, tells me that Joe Biden was violating the separation of powers significantly more than Trump, and nobody cared. Nobody thought it was going to tear down the democracy. And we just moved forward. In fact, people voted for Kamala Harris, who also backed that very same court packing bill in her campaign. We were voting to tear down the pillars of democracy.
Let's go ahead. Let's go stop rule pause y'all right there. It's a good stop point for a second. Let's go to the judges. Who would like to ask some questions first? Lethe, what you got? You got any questions?
Okay, so when we're talking about the separation of powers, so Tyler, you're saying that the DOJ being a separate power that the president shouldn't be influencing is not a hard set rule. Is there any precedent for this?
Well, I mean, it's kind of a taboo. I'm pretty sure he has the full right to direct him to, hey, investigate X, Y, and Z person if he wanted to. I'm pretty sure. This is a little outside the bounds of the debate, but I'm pretty sure that is not a hard set rule. I think that's more of a conflict of interest. They can pull you in and ask you about it. But even if you could be held in contempt of Congress, like Eric Holder could, Obama could just not persecute it, and that's the end of that too.
And I want to hear what Cassell has to say about it.
Yeah, and let's take Tyler's statement as truth there. I think that's kind of getting to a theme here where even if he did have the ability, we're pushing the boundaries into uncharted territories or unprecedented territories in some of these instances where this shouldn't be the case. We shouldn't be accepting that as something that's okay to do, even if he does have the legal authority, even if that is considered legal. I did just think that brings us into really bad territory. And like I said, if you have the president as in power and he's firing people left and right who don't agree with him, then what's to say that he's just not going to replace whoever in the DOJ with somebody who will go after someone until he hires the right person? And I don't think that's helping Americans. I think that's bad for democracy, but it's not going after actual bad people.
Well, that's literally his job, though. Like, I just looked it up. There is no actual hard rule. It's just a long-standing norm and internal inside the DOJ, but that's like the job. All of the power of the executive stems from the president. So if the president wants somebody that's going to fulfill his agenda, then he puts them in the cabinet position. If they're not fulfilling his agenda, then he removes them from the cabinet position and puts somebody else in. That's literally their role, is to serve the privilege of the president and do what he wants. When they start going rogue and doing what they want, that's when you get rid of them.
So when they take an oath under the Constitution, it's for who? The president or for the people?
I'm pretty sure they take it for both, if I'm not mistaken, but the fact is, like, they're allowed to disagree, but the courts are the ultimate decider. I covered this in my opening. The president's allowed to look at laws and interpret them a specific way. It's Congress's job to make sure they're extremely specific and not allocate power to the president of discretion. If he has that discretionary power, he's allowed to turn around and interpret them how he did. Joe Biden did it multiple times to try to forgive student loans. He tried to rewrite his parole authority and for the first time in U.S. history, bypassed Congress to make his own visa program to bring in about 700,000 people from Venezuela, Haiti, and Cuba and such. And it got shut down because all of it was illegal, but it was because that's how he interpreted the laws. And that's their complete privilege. And people are going to hate that I'm going to say this, but Trump even had the right to interpret the Electoral Count Act the way he did, even if his intent was a bad one, which was to subvert democracy. He has that legal right to look at the law and say, this is what I think it means. And the courts are there to check him on that. Even John Eastman said, if this goes to the courts, they're going to say Trump's theory to read the Electoral Count Act is false. So at the end of the day, even John Eastman knew the Trump thing would fail because of that. So,
yeah. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go. Is that all you got, Grid? Not Grid. Is that all you got, Lethe? All right, fantastic. Grid, take us away.
Yeah, so I just have one, maybe two questions. First, so I actually do know that the Department of Justice is underneath Trump. through because they report to the Secretary of I believe it Secretary of the Defense, but whatever, not Secretary of State either. But this report, they are ruled over by one of his appointees. He tells the appointee what he wants done, and then it gets done, or the appointee will fire that person. Judges can be fired just like anybody else. They're not elected officials; they're employees. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there, just to kind of put that issue at rest, because I don't want us to go around the tree about it too much. But one thing that's interesting is that when I have to ask, so Cassell, do you think that Trump is wrong to order to order the National Guard to back up the police and the federal agencies in these various cities? You think he's wrong to do that, or you just think it's an abuse of his power?
Well, I think both. I think he's wrong to do that because it's an abuse of his power. And
Okay.
I mentioned too, the way he's going into cities like Chicago, for example, where the police chief themselves, Portland, where the police chief and the people are not asking for this. The governor is not asking for this. Why is he doing it? It's really to quell speech and to quell people's political views who are protesting the way that ICE is enforcing the laws in this country. And I think that protesting is an American right. I don't think that's an insurrection by any means. If he had actual reasons, and I mentioned earlier in 2020 when he sent in the National Guard to protect federal lands and federal buildings, or like how Tyler mentioned in Seattle, they were taking over federal lands there too. That's some would say an actual legal constitutional reason, but just throwing the National Guard in there because he doesn't think that crime is being affected by the governor or mayor in the right way, totally illegal, totally unconstitutional to do that without reason.
Tyler, yeah, same question.
I'm just going to stick with my original answer. I don't think it's been addressed to the point where I want to abandon it. The Ninth Circuit already cleared these actions. We have United States versus Eunice, which is from the 80s, where this exact question was asked and resolved in the courts. We see 1,000-time violent rates against ICE up from last year. We see targeting of the facilities. We see 2 mass shootings at ICE facilities. We see multiple instances of violence every day. They're all over Twitter. And we have several instances of the state government not wanting the National Guard to be invoked during the Civil Rights era where the presidents invoked them, including JFK 2 times, LBJ doing it once, Eisenhower doing it, all to make sure that the federal laws around civil rights were enforced in racist states. So, again, if you change the subject to something else, everybody agrees this is perfectly fine. They just disagree that they don't think Trump has the right to do it. I think it's just...
Sorry,
go for it.
Are you referring to the 1967 incident in Arkansas where they sent in the National Guard to force the state to desegregate?
I have multiple instances. I have 1957 Eisenhower, JFK. I think you're talking about LBJ in specific, right?
Yeah, I believe I am, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I have multiple.
Yeah, so first to you, Tyler, it's the inverse of what's happening right now, right? The state was the problem, and the National Guard was sent in to protect the citizenry. In this case, the citizenry from their government. In this case, we're protecting the government, the police, and the federal agents there from the citizens. Would you consider that an equal?
I'd say that's one way to look at it. The other way to look at it, though, is there's federal immigration law that's not only being ignored, but oftentimes we see the states actually working to subvert it. Multiple judges have been arrested now for letting illegal immigrants out their back door, keeping MS-13 members in their house and giving them guns that were used in shootings, things of that nature. We've seen this multiple times now where the enforcement mechanism for the federal government is being hindered by the action of the states. So it's their job to go in and make sure federal law is actually being enforced. The same way Obama did to California when he raided them over and over for weed.
I'm sorry, Tyler. I need to get Cassell's answer to the same question. Did you catch that, Cassell?
Yeah, can you just sorry. Can
Yeah,
you just
yeah.
repeat one more time?
So in 1967, I believe it was 67. I don't have notes in front of me. The National Guard was sent in to force the state to comply with the federal desegregation laws. In this case, they were protecting the citizens from their government, from the state government. What we have now is the exact opposite, right? Now we're protecting our federal employees, our government, from the citizens. Do you think that that's an equality? Do you think that's completely different? Do you think it was right back in 1967 to do that? Um,
Yeah.
and
Okay. Got it. I would say that for me, they are different, right? You're protecting a protected class of people. In this case, I'm not saying, and let me be clear. I said before that people who are attacking ICE agents should be prosecuted, and that's not legal to do. So I'm not saying people have the right to attack federal agents. What I'm saying is that sending in the National Guard, and this has nothing to do with ICE, sending the National Guard into Portland is not illegal based on what Trump is asking the governor and the mayor of cities like Portland and Oregon to do, because he's looking for crime to decrease. That's not why you send the National Guard in. So when I'm talking about ICE, or when Tyler's talking about ICE being attacked, that's fine if you want to go protect your federal agents from being attacked by people, but allowing them to protest is also a legal right. And that's why I'm saying that Trump is cracking down on protests. And that's where I think the difference is between those two examples.
Okay, well, you guys can fight that out. I just wanted some answers there just to get some
Yeah.
perspective. So you guys can
Perfect.
argue that
Yeah.
out.
Thank you for that segue. All right, y'all are gonna have another about 8-10 minutes here to fight, and then we're gonna go judges again. So go ahead.
I think we said all we need to on that. I said that it is legal. He said it's not. I think that the police, we both agree that the attacking ICE is bad. He's just saying that sending in the next wave of backup for the federal agents that are being attacked is also bad. Where
Let me ask a question just to move things along. All right, so the prompt here y'all talk about is like a threat to democracy, kind of, right? Is that what we're talking about? All right, cool. So,
Sure.
What is like an eventual outcome do you see going forward if things keep going the same way? Like Tyler, I'm assuming you're gonna want to say one way, you're gonna say different. What do y'all think? Here, go ahead. I'll start with you, Cassell. What are your thoughts?
Yeah,
Ooh.
so I think that what Tyler said, where people overhype things and say, this is going to be a fascist takeover, or Don actually said, I'm saying that this is taking time. This isn't going to start with Trump and end with Trump. It may start with Trump, but it's slowly eroding our democracy over time when we have these things that become, commonplace now. So if a Democrat, and this is coming from somebody who's saying, let's say that the things that Trump is doing was a Democrat in office who's cracking down on certain things a similar way, going after religious organizations or going after people who lean right or MAGA supporters who he doesn't support, taking away their funding for just because they're in red states and things of that nature. Where I'm saying these are things that authoritarians do to affect change in our legal rights over time. So we're going to see democracy slowly wane. And I'm not saying that we're going to have a dictatorship anytime soon, but I think that, we've seen it with the Patriot Act. We've seen it with certain laws being passed. When you have certain people who make up a majority in Congress, we're seeing that going to happen now with gerrymandering that Trump is advocating for. So when you have an overwhelming force from one side, and it becomes more and more extreme, you're going to start getting more extreme laws. And I don't want that to happen for either side. I just think in this case, Trump is doing it from a right-wing standpoint. And I think that's over time, if this continues, it's bad for democracy.
Tyler, what do you think going forward?
Okay, so we had his three starting federalism, separation of powers. I think this goes into what you're talking about with foundations of democracy with voting. The gerrymandering fight is up to the state level. And again, like Texas is saying that their gerrymandering needs to happen, and they went forward and did it, which abides by state laws. California also has the right to do it. A bunch of states now, left and right, are doing it. I don't know what this has to do with Trump eroding the pillars of democracy. He's not in charge of this. This is.
Well, do you acknowledge that Trump had called the governor of Texas to
Well, hold on.
changed
Let
the.
me ask a question, Castle, and then I'll let you ask that question.
Yeah. Okay.
Castle addressed this here, Tyler, and I think this is actually something I would like to hear you answer. He said it's not necessarily Trump himself, right, as the major threat. It's that it's what he's going to like kind of go down the line, right? It's like okay, it's a slow erosion. What is your answer to that concern? Like on your side, why is that not something people should be concerned about as a threat to democracy?
I mean, it is a little bit concerning, but at the end of the day, we go in those ebbs and flows, and sometimes everyone's at each other's throats. It's not even close to as bad as when we were in the middle of a fucking civil war. There's definitely been times where we've been more divided down partisan lines, and if you look leading up to the election, the number 5 issue for Democrats and number 3 issue for Republicans was the parties getting along better and working together more. So I really think there's a big foundation of a lot of normies that aren't on the internet that really do want that solid country back. I don't like Trump's rhetoric, but like his policies, which you see in polling all the time. 80% of people want him to shut his mouth, but 50% like his policies. So I think that we are going to just bounce right back. I think that the guardrails are going to hold, and they have been holding. And so far, I don't see it as bad as the separation of powers argument. Trump has abided by every single Supreme Court ruling that's come down since he's taken office. Granted, he's won about arguably all 21, maybe 20, if you don't think he won the Garcia one because he had to bring him back, but he's still got some significant wins in that ruling. And the fact that he's abiding by the separation of powers, how federalism is just now a dispute between me and him as to if he should let troops in there because we've agreed that the Ninth Circuit Court said it was legal. I don't see gerrymandering as a strong argument to say that Trump is eroding this. If it's a bunch of people over time, maybe you got a point there. I hadn't really researched to negate that, but it doesn't really fit the prompt of Trump's central power grab threatens the foundations of America's democracy. Because it's not a central power grab; it's literally state level policy.
Well, so if I can respond.
Go ahead. Castle. Also, I'd like to maybe explain this to you because you mentioned gradual, and I think Tyler just hit this home with it being the central power grab being the source of the problem. How is this? If it's only going to be gradual, how is it a central power grab then?
So I think the gerrymandering point I was going to make kind of flows into this. So Tyler mentioned it being state, not central. But if you have the president asking state authorities to make rule changes mid-decade, which don't happen, I think it happened maybe one time before in Texas, but you're having other states look at this, Missouri, Indiana. And the only reason Democrats are looking at gerrymandering back in California is to offset that. So it wouldn't be Democrats saying, hey, let's gerrymander for the fun of it. It's to only combat the force on the other side because Trump knows that the midterms may not be in his favor and needs as many House seats as possible to keep a majority there. So I think when we talk about central power, it's also the influence of Trump at the federal level for state actors, state governors, local city officials as well, to make sure that they're listening to him and doing what he says. Otherwise, he's not going to have their back, and it could affect them in the future for their political future. So I think people noticed that in his first term. People noticed that if he disagreed with you, you were on the chopping block, and nobody wants to lose their job in Congress. And he obviously understands the power that he holds and his popularity within the conservative base. So I think it goes hand in hand, state power and central power. He's using the force of the presidency to kind of push the envelope.
Let's see, a unitary presidential theory would say he'd be seizing that power for himself. But what we're arguing is he's calling state level leaders and saying, change your elections so we get more power in the congressional house. That would be the opposite of unitary theory. That would just be politics as normal. That's completely fine in my mind if you want to try to win more political power off your success in your election. But as you said, changing the rules midway to do something that would benefit your party is kind of bad. Well, Joe Biden tried to pass 2 major bills on the federal level, the Freedom of Vote Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, both of those in the middle of congressional cycles. After an election had happened, he wanted to change the rules after he'd won in ways that would benefit the Democrats. So you're saying Trump...
How would the John Lewis Voting Rights Act give people less rights or ruin the foundation of democracy?
I didn't say it would.
I don't think it would.
I think it would allow more fraud, which would definitely...
Okay.
I mean, it's just changing the... You were talking about changing the rules midway through. How would gerrymandering undermine democracy? It's been part of democracy since day one. So, like, you're adding
Because
a new
it
metric, but
disenfranchises folks. I mean, in California, it disenfranchises folks. In blue states, it does as well. So we know that gerrymandering is bad. So even furthering that in Texas, which is already a gerrymandered state, it becomes obvious that they don't care about the people's voices there. They just care about holding power for one party rule in that state. And I think in the same in other states like Indiana and Missouri, where there's only 1 or 2 Democratic seats, and you're only left with 1 or 0, I think it's pretty obvious that you're saying that it's up to the states. That's not a central power. I mean, let's be real here. Trump will use that to grant himself more powers in the executive if he has the legislative branch behind him. He can pass whatever laws he wants at that point.
Okay,
Why wouldn't they pass them?
I get what you're saying, but again, that wouldn't be unitary theory. That wouldn't be Trump doing a central power grab. That would be the Republicans campaigning to give their party more power in the current system that we have. That would be different than tearing down the government norms to give Trump power. And again, we're talking about
Wait. But how would passing a law that says Trump has more power than he does now not help the executive branch?
I mean, you could hypothetically do that, but that would be a
Yeah.
different step. That would be an indirect step. The way that they're doing it right now is they're trying to get another branch of government more power, which was not Trump. This is the House of Representatives. And we're talking about Trump's central power grab threatening the foundations of American democracy. If gerrymandering has been there since day one, has always existed in states, and been disenfranchising people the entire time, I don't understand how Trump calling a state senator and saying gerrymander as bad as the other side is threatening democracy any more than it's already ever been threatened, since gerrymandering's been a part of it since day one.
Well,
I just don't see that.
Let me ask this time. I would like you to answer this. Then we're gonna go to the judges. That's the answer. So I'll maybe give Cassell a chance to answer this, right? As well. All right. So I think that I have a question though. So you just mentioned like that scenario right there, President Trump calling a senator, right? You would agree that there's a legislative branch, a judicial branch, an executive branch, right? Yeah. Yes. Okay. So when I see this, I guess my question is, let's just since I'm a righty and I don't like exactly strong, huge government, the idea that Trump using his executive influence as the leader to call somebody that's relatively lower down the totem pole, regular senator, or even a state senator at a state level, you don't see this as a step against federalism and a step against separation of powers, because it seems like you just think, influence is fine, but influence is part of the soft power of the president. You don't see that as a potential issue, or no? You, Tyler, first, yeah.
I mean, it could be any action that could be taken could be, and that's why we got that immunity ruling. That it's really got a lot of legal gray areas. But yeah, when you are elected in a primary to lead your party, you're de facto the party leader, and calling up state governments and saying this is how you should do certain things to be on key with our national message. Maybe you're in a purple state. Maybe you actually go here. Actually, you're going to reject X, Y, and Z policy because it's going to look good to the moderates in your state, so you can win. Blah blah blah. Things that we've seen with Joe Manchin in the past. That's your job as the party leader, is to make sure your party gets power, is to fight to get your party power. I see nothing wrong with that. And even if you did think something was wrong with it, you can't argue that it's a central power grab by Trump's administration in the executive branch. It's state politics to make them have more House seats.
Okay.
It is very little to do.
All right, I'm going to let you go ahead and answer that, Cassell, and then we're going to go to judges. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think Tyler is thinking about it short term. And again, this isn't something that I've said that democracy is going to end anytime soon. But when you're handing the legislative branch more power for one side of the aisle, you run the risk of threatening those foundations if they want to grant the executive more power through law. And Congress has the ability to do that if one side were to be able to generate more House seats and we know the states that are growing, right? It's not any fault of the state of Texas that more people are wanting to live there, but a lot of liberals are looking to move into Texas as well as conservatives. And we're seeing the people who are represented in those states are only leaning to one side. And I think that's dangerous long term. I'm not expecting Congress to, hand over their power from the legislative branch to Trump right now, but it doesn't have to be Trump. It can be somebody who Trump wants to be the next president. It could be JD Vance gets elected, whoever's after him. So I think this leads us down to a bad road, and that's where I'm trying to get at with the whole gerrymandering pieces. I don't want to see either side use that to their advantage, and it's definitely been used more. Like you're saying, he's calling up a senator to help his party out. Well, we know that mid-districting or mid-decade redistricting is not a thing. And it's not normal. So if this happened after the decade and you're like, well, you could say that Trump, what he's doing is just what happens with every census every 10 years. The fact that he's getting involved in the middle of the decade is not something any president has ever done. Obviously, Texas as a state has done it, but getting involved directly is something that a president hasn't done before. And it's definitely being used more as a political tool than we've seen in the past, where states may have decided this on their own without political influence.
All right, let's go to the judges' grid. I think you should start us off this time. What you got?
All right. Yeah. So, I don't know that the gerrymandering thing is, in my opinion, that's a states' rights issue, not necessarily a federal issue. I mean, obviously, it affects Congress, but just like California was able to gerrymander their districts, and to the point where it's impossible for a Republican to even run in a primary there. Are we going to undo that? I mean, what you're saying is that, well, it was we're not going to do anything about these other things. So what do we do now? So I'm interested in both of you guys' opinion on and I'm not, and you don't have to stick directly to gerrymandering. I'm using gerrymandering here as an example of the things that I think Trump is trying to fix. Now, he may be ham-fisting it, he may not be effective at it, but I think that he's trying to fix it. And I would like, and I don't care which one of you go first, but I'd like to hear how you think Trump is either succeeding or failing at what he's actually trying to do. Gerrymandering is a small part of a much bigger theme with Trump. And so rather than get bogged down in the details of one specific issue, I'd really like to hear the global point of view on the issue. So who wants to go first? Okay, Tyler, go with it.
So I would say that overall, what Trump is trying to do with he is actually seizing power. A lot of those powers have been things the presidents prior to him have had. Spending with congressional authority. When Congress allocates a certain amount of money, you have to spend it all exactly how they want. If you can get the job done for cheaper, you should be able to return money to Congress, but currently you can't do that. Looking in the past, if you look at the Louisiana Purchase, that was made with money that Congress allocated to build warships. Instead of building warships to go to war with France, we instead turned around, took that money, and made the Louisiana Purchase to buy more land and a peaceful ally with France. So there are times where these things have been part of the president's power. And I want to say it went away under post-Nixon. We saw them go away. It's only been relatively short that these norms have been put in place. And I would say Trump is trying to grasp some of the constitutional norms. Same things with deportations. We're finding out that, almost all these cases that he's winning for deportations, these are how the laws were intended to be used. This is how the INA was intended to be used, the AEA was intended to be used, and things of that nature. So if we're seeing that, if we're actually going back in the conversations, and we're also seeing something similar with birthright citizenship. The claim that they filed with birthright citizenship goes into the debates that Congress had prior to implementing the 14th Amendment, showing that it was not supposed to be for people that were in the country illegally or that had permanent residence in a different nation and just came here for X, Y, or Z reason. And we're seeing Trump go in and argue different interpretations the same way Biden did, the same way every president has a luxury to.
Okay, so just so I have it clear, you're saying that Trump's not actually seizing power or expanding the power of his office. Your position is that Trump is simply consolidating what was already there and clarifying, not, and I hate to use the word power, but the abilities and duties and responsibilities of the office that have been eroded away or been subjugated to other offices or entities like just for example, the Department of Human Services, right? Like they may be handling something that the president.
Well, this is more, because that would still be underneath the president. I'm talking more what judicial precedent has ruled away.
Okay.
Like what other branches have taken away from the president.
I just wanted the clarification. Okay, Cassell, Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think what when it comes to what Tyler said, it kind of also gets to my point a little bit where it's like, I'm not arguing that Trump isn't allowed to contest things. I'm saying that when he contests something and doesn't like the answer, he goes in and changes the person who's contesting that thing. And so we've seen it already with the Letitia James case and appointing a White House staffer as an Eastern District judge there in order to go after his political opponents. So that's where my problem comes in with the central power thesis here is that, trying to see if birthright citizenship is illegal or the way that SCOTUS has, made their ruling on it, that's fine. But then
Before
going
you
in
stray
and
too
saying that,
far
oh,
off,
the person in SCOTUS is, sorry, what?
before we stray too far from it, I think. Do you think Letitia James is the best example to use there because she literally ran on putting Trump in jail? If I were president, I would have gotten rid of her. Right? Like
It's my job. I got that argument already waiting. Don't worry about it. It's my job.
I want him to. I mean, look, I want an example. I appreciate an example. I'm just giving him the opportunity to make a better example than Letitia James. Also, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I just that one kind of broke my brain a little. I'm sorry, man. I interrupted you. Continue.
No. It's totally fine too. And maybe I can get some clarity too if I was confusing in my argument there. But the reason I brought her up is because I think when it comes down to actually going against a legal case, and again, this is very preliminary, it's alleged crimes. Many people I've been seeing who are actual legal experts can't even really point to a crime there. Even the original district attorney wasn't able to prosecute her for anything. So that's why they had to install this new pro-Trump judge there to try to come up with a grand jury indictment. So that's all I'm saying is that when you aren't getting the thing that you were looking for and trying to get your political opponents in trouble, I think it's bad when we have courts or judges saying one thing and then they're not.
The methodology, not necessarily what he's trying to do, but the way he's trying to do it.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Does that make more sense?
Would you agree that his actual goal is to just regain and recenter the presidential office as he views it, I guess, or as it historically has been?
Are you saying that he's trying? So you're saying he's trying to revert the presidential office back to what it should be doing?
Right, yes, right. Because one of the typical arguments, I'm just trying to clarify here, is that Trump is expanding the powers of the president, and yet almost every Supreme Court ruling has gone back to that's within his purview. So if we're going to make a claim like you're expanding the powers of the president, and that's wrong, but every single time the constitutional scholars say nope, he can do that. That's exactly what was intended. At some point, where do you just say he's just doing what he's supposed to be doing, and we don't like it because nobody's done it in 20 years or 30 years or whatever?
Got it. Yeah. So, I think that was one of my pieces in my intro was that he has a Supreme Court who is, I mean, let's be honest, maybe Tyler doesn't agree with this, but I think it's an obvious thing that the Supreme Court is pretty political, right? We can agree that Ketanji Brown Jackson isn't really going to rule a majority for Trump, and most of the conservatives have been ruling a majority for Trump. So I think that Trump knows this and is using the Supreme Court to allow him to expand his powers. Again, that's my thoughts on that, my opinion. But I think it plays a central role.
Understand where you guys were positioned on that because it's important going forward.
All right, Leafy, what you got?
Okay, so when it comes down to what is within the president's purview, just because the president can do something that's going to press the norms, should the president do something that is going to press the norms, and should that be acceptable? Tyler.
It depends. It's circumstantial. Sometimes I think it's acceptable to press the norms, especially if we have a system of checks and balances set up to make sure that you don't go outside of all the boxes that are supposed to be checked, and that you adhere to the rulings of those boxes. Other times, I don't think so. It really has to go case by case, because I can think of 100 instances that I'd say yes to and 100 I'd say no to just off the top of my head, where pushing a norm might be a little out of whack. But luckily, we do have a lot of systems in our country, like voting, judicial review, different laws and structures and regulations to ensure that those really crazy norms don't always go through without significant impediment. But I'd say generally it's an okay thing to do as long as we're talking within moral goods.
Okay, and Cassell.
Yeah, I would agree largely with what Tyler said there. I think norms can be a loaded term, but if you're doing something in an ethical way or there's good precedent for it, I could see maybe you don't want it to be obviously it's a norm for a reason, so you don't want it to disrupt that as many times and exploit that. But I think it's okay for the president to test those norms. I just think you have to do it obviously in a legal constitutional way. Part of what my argument is that some of these things are being challenged unconstitutionally.
All right. Any other questions, Lefty? All right. Go ahead. All right. I'm going to give y'all boys about 6 minutes to go, and then we're going to go into closing. So go ahead. Guys, at the end of this chat, at the end of this, judges are going to send me in a DM who they thought week won. Then I'm going to have put the chat up to vote. We'll have a little convo about what we thought of the debate before we talk about who won for about 3 minutes. And then, guys, we'll read the chat vote, and then we'll go to the judges and tell us who won and why. Yeah, all right. Let's do it.
Here we go.
Yeah.
All right, so I got 2 more arrows in my quiver I want to sling at your argument and see how they land.
Right.
So first, I want to talk about the executive branch, Trump enhancing the executive branch's power. I think in ways he absolutely is. I don't think he's going past traditional norms of what he has power to do or going past the laws, and the courts backing him back that up. But at the end of the day, if you look at the totality of his actions, we can see Trump put forth 2 executive orders. One of those, every time a federal regulation is passed from his own branch, they have to make an economic report for all of the sectors of the economy that'll be affected. And the second executive order allows private citizens to call a hearing through the House committee that's attached to that specific regulation and allow these stakeholders to actually argue on behalf of their company or their economic sector against the regulation. Prior to Trump taking office the first time, only one time Congress had ever voted to slap down a regulation. Because of the Congressional Review Act, they did it, I think, 20-something times in his first term, and in his second term, they've been doing it left and right as well. They've been slapping down all sorts of regulations put out by these regulatory bodies. So Trump gave Congress review power over his own branch that they did not have prior, stripping him and his branch of the power to create regulations freely. That, to me, is limiting his own power more than any president have in my lifetime. What do you say to that?
So I would turn that back around and saying that the recent executive order or action that he just proposed of jailing someone for burning an American flag goes right up against that. And also, when you're thinking about limiting government regulation, that's something that conservatives have always been for. So that's not something surprising or really against Trump in this case. You always want to limit government, try to restrict government as much as possible. But I think other executive orders that he has enacted have been threatening constitutional amendments, specifically the First Amendment. And I think that, if you're going to say that you're allowed to kill supposed Antifa members, I mean, American citizens, we just had this argument the other day about Obama drone striking an American citizen in Yemen. And now we're talking about Kristi Noem saying that we're allowed to kill supposed Antifa members if they're a threat to ICE agents. I think that's troubling. And it's anytime the government is looking to attack its own citizens, it's really, really, really bad. So I think those things have been an affront to our democracy. And if you want to talk about executive orders. So
just to critique what you said there, Trump has, as you said, the right to try to challenge these things. I don't think his flag amendment, his flag executive order, lines up antithetical with the First Amendment as much as you think. If you read it again, you'd see it's only when it's used to incite violence and not just directly burning the flag as an act of free speech. That being said, Joe Biden's orders were a vaccine mandate for the entire country. When that didn't work, it was a vaccine mandate for all federal employees that didn't have a religious exemption. He was sued multiple times, and all those lawsuits almost turned out as W's for the people suing for the religious exemption that were removed from their jobs and had to be reinstated and such. So I would argue that not only is making executive orders that might dance around with the First Amendment a norm, but it's not going to hurt democracy at all because the previous president did it all the time and nobody seems to care.
So you're right about the flag burning being incitement, but in the case in Portland where it happened, there wasn't incitement in this case. So I don't know why that would be the case for somebody to be indicted for that. But to your point about Joe Biden too, with federal mandate, I mean, if you want to equate the two, I think protecting people from getting sick is a little bit different than not protecting somebody's right to free speech. So that's all I would kind of retort that with is it's a little bit different when you're trying to save a person from getting sick. I understand people's right and what to do with their bodies, but I think the context behind it makes a big difference.
All right, and the second thing I wanted to bring up was Trump's weaponization of government. You're saying that he's telling prosecutors to go after Letitia James, who we know, based on the evidence that's public, actually did the thing that she's being accused of, and he fired one of his employees that wouldn't do the job he was asking him to. I would also go into, if you're looking at weaponization of government, we just had break this week that Joe Biden, when he was the vice president, called the CIA. The CIA had a tape of Ukrainian officials talking about Joe Biden being a hypocrite because his son was working for Burisma and gathering millions of dollars for his family and cashing checks. Joe Biden called the CIA and said, I want this report to disappear. And it disappeared until about a week ago. They found it saved as a draft in somebody's emails and completely gone off any CIA records. So we have Joe Biden reaching out and quashing investigations into his son. On top of that, we have the whole Trump-Russia story. Alphagate completely made up. Michael Sussman manipulated the FBI. We have actors like Peter Strzok inside the FBI, Andy McCabe, to completely fabricate a Trump-Russia collusion narrative that we now was 100% made up. We have them lying to the FISA courts. We have them using FBI tools. And then when Trump fired Comey, we had a 3-year independent investigation after that. So in terms of weaponizing the justice system, would you not say that all these weaponizations that we now have proven didn't actually undermine democracy at all?
Yeah, so just to push back in a few of those, for the Letitia James case, I mean,
I'm going to give you 30 seconds and then we're going to close this. Go ahead, try it, Cassell.
Okay, I'll try to fit in. But, it just began. The grand jury indictment just got handed in. There's really nothing that I can say that she didn't do. But based on the evidence, I would just disagree. Based on timing, I don't think that there's a crime there. And for Joe Biden, if you want to talk about unethical behavior and making money in office, we know that Trump is running crypto schemes and promoting crypto, NFTs, and all these things to make money in office. And if you want to call it unethical behavior, I would say for Joe Biden to do that is unethical, just the same as it is for Trump is unethical. But we do know, at least in both cases, they're not unconstitutional. So that's all I'll say about those.
Fantastic. All right, so we're going to be going to close the judges. Send me in a DM who won, and then we're going to come to you all at the end. Chat, I'm going to be posting a poll during closings. So we're going to sit here and y'all vote who won. As soon as closings are done, we'll have 3 minutes to close it out. Tyler, you're the next, so start us off.
All right, so we went through a lot of things. I let him, in his introduction, pick the 3 pillars that he wanted to argue on over erosion. It was the foundations of democracy. He went specifically into voting. All we got there was arguments about gerrymandering. I even expected him to go after Trump's push for voter IDs. He did not. All he brought up was a state-level policy that states are entitled to that's been going on since the inception of the United States. So foundations of democracy was pigeonholed into voting, which was pigeonholed into state policy that does not give Trump any more power. Who it gives power to is the House of Representatives due to the fact that they have more seats in it. This would mean Trump is using politics as intended, not seizing power for his own brand. We went to the separation of powers as the second, showing that almost every Supreme Court ruling has come out, Trump has abided. Every single one that's come out, Trump has abided by, but who's actually ignoring them are the district judges. There's 5 courts in 3 states, 2 states in D.C., where almost 80% of these injunctions have come out of. They're being judge shopped to the most far left judges. I can give you their names if you wanted me to go look them up specifically, and they're in charge of most of these cases. They're being shopped out. People from different states are coming all the way across the country to get these specific judges. And they're ignoring the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has reprimanded them multiple times. Gorsuch, Alito, and Kavanaugh have all come out and said you cannot ignore Supreme Court ruling. You cannot ignore what we say the law is and continue to just go rogue. They're going rogue. They're rogue courts. And so the separation of powers is not being violated by Trump. Right now it's being violated by Democrat appointees in local districts. So that was condition number 2. Condition number 3 is federalism. And what we talked about there is Trump seems to be calling states and saying, hey, you should do this thing that you have power to, not trying to overrule them, not trying to force policy down their throat from what Joe Biden did with 2 different voting acts on the federal level. He's calling them and suggesting something. That, to me, is respecting federalism, especially around voting. We have Joe Biden putting out 2 acts that would change voting from the federal level, specifically on states. That would open up voter fraud, could undermine the whole voting process, potentially down the road. And that's absolutely fine, but him just calling people. On top of that, we talked about ICE and different, mostly the National Guard going to states, and we've shown from the Ninth Circuit about 2 weeks ago that this is completely legal. It's within Trump's powers, and we're going after a terrorist organization and protecting our federal troops. Even he agreed those federal troops need protection and people attacking them should be arrested. He just doesn't want the specific force to go in and do that. He's saying that actually protecting them, actually sending in the people that are supposed to protect them and supposed to arrest these people is bad. So we should do it in theory, but in practice, no thank you. I think letting him pick his own 3 pillars and going through and refuting those 3 pillars myself has been pretty successful, but it's really up to the judges at the end of the day. And I got some more things, but at the end of the day, I think I can show you that the whataboutism defense is strong here because whataboutism in law is legal precedent. Whataboutism in politics is political precedent.
All right. Thank you so much. All right, Cassell, go ahead and close us out. But guys, voting's up.
Cool. So I didn't prepare an ending here, so I'll try my best to try to keep my thoughts organized here. But I did say in my last statement, in my intro, that my opponent is going to say things, the things Trump is doing is legal, and that the courts will overturn them if they're not, and that there has been precedent from Democrats to do some similar things. And I know that was going to come up because that's really the only argument here to defend Trump's actions. And like I said in my arguments earlier today, I don't think that the things that Democrats had done in the past make it good or okay just because it's Democrats doing them. And I think that's particularly my warning about the future is that we don't want to delve into these deeper threats to our democracy in case a singular party in power uses them and exploits these certain provisions just to benefit their side or one part of the population. And Tyler brought up, an example of district courts or district judges ignoring the Supreme Court. Well, if it came to ignoring the Supreme Court, we know that Trump had to abide by banning TikTok, which he completely ignored, which was set up by the Supreme Court. Didn't seem to care about what they said or had anything to say about that. So I think when it comes to ignoring the courts, it's hard for me to believe that Trump is the person who is better at that than these other rogue district judges that Tyler brought up. But overall, my point the whole time is that this doesn't start and end with Trump. We know that things will last longer as a democracy in the U.S. than a lot of the doomsayers say, but democracy doesn't die overnight, and we know that this is something that is going to last over time. Tyler's arguments that, these are all things and suggestions that Trump says to these people. This isn't a policy. We all know that's a farce. Every time Trump talks to somebody, whether it's finding 6,000 votes in Georgia or trying to prosecute somebody, if you don't do what he says, he will go after you and attack you. Even if you're in his own party, we've seen him do it against Thomas Massey. We've seen it do it against Rand Paul. We've seen it do it to private employers, private citizens in their own right. And so I think this is a dangerous precedent that's being set. And we didn't get to a lot of the other pieces I also had, which would talk about the rights to free press and the rights to free speech, where, again, like I mentioned, the Department of Defense forcing the press to have credentials where they aren't going to publish news stories unless they approve of them first. These are just things that I don't think are normal, and under an authoritarian type of presidency is something that we're starting to look like. And so I think overall, when you see the three pillars that are being eroded, federalism, separation of powers, and the Constitution and the rule of law, I think I brought a lot of examples to the plate where Trump has encroached on these and is really pushing the envelope for a lot of these different pieces of the puzzle that are harmful to American democracy.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much. Almost perfect timing on the dot. All right, go ahead. Voting's going to be going on for about 3 minutes, chat, so get your votes in. It looks like we're at 60% Cassell to 40% Tyler right now, but y'all still got 3 minutes. Judges sent to me. I'm going to go take a quick leak. I know Leafy has to reset his screen real quick, and we'll be right back to just discuss that. So, guys, enjoy this ad.
That was smart of you to bring up Trump attacking his fucking own party at the end there, and not give me the chance, because like Biden called Manchin and Sinema segregationists because they wouldn't back his voting rights bill, and the whole party went after them because they said that Build Back Better would cause inflation and shit like that. Like they were put over the coals the same exact way.
I think I mean, you could argue about it. It was pretty different. Like, no, Biden just didn't have pull the same way that Trump has. Like, there's no way anybody Biden went after people in the Democratic Party would really rally behind. So you could say he attacked people in his own party, but like, I would argue that Joe Manchin probably had more power in West Virginia than Biden ever did. But yeah, I was more surprised that you didn't go after the TikTok thing, because Trump totally ignored the SCOTUS ruling on that.
No, he didn't. He has a presidential discretion in that.
For TikTok?
Yeah, there's
I don't
a
know. I was reading.
law.
I was reading the opposite, that he didn't have the power to just completely ignore that. I mean, I think he had one time he was able to suspend the ruling, or like wait 90 days or something. But I think after that, he had to make a decision on that, and he kept pushing it out, which I don't think was legal. But
I think it's on his third push right now, to be honest with you, and I see that the 90-day push thing exists. I don't see anything past 90 days, so you might be right that now he is in violation. But
but now he's also like, it's being sold now, so I think it's not going to be an issue anymore.
All right. Chat, y'all have about 1 minute left to get voting. Levy will be right back. He has to just quickly reset his PC. Looks like he's already back in the thing, I think. So we should be good to go in a brief moment. All right, guys. All right, fantastic. We got about 40 seconds left here in the voting, guys. Oh man, we got 7 for Tyler, 7 for Cassell, 5 for Tyler. About 30 seconds left. It's close as always. 58%, guys. Get them in. I'm excited to go to the closings here. The judge decisions. It's been a very good one, back and forth. I think. Pretty pleased. Very good showing out of you, Cassell, for the first time here. Remember, this is the only ranked debate league on Twitch, as far as I'm aware. And really, it doesn't matter, because it's the best of the ranked debate leagues. If there is another one, I'm going to go ahead and declare that right now. And you want to know why? It's because I'm a part of it, and I am a golden god. And so, guys, I hope y'all have enjoyed yourselves so far. It looks like we are about 15 seconds out or so on the timing. I can't really tell because I have my screen super small, so I might have misjudged that by a few seconds. But we're almost there. We got 7 to 6. It's coming down to the wire. Ought to be good. Contestants, I highly advise y'all vote for yourselves, as always. It's good stuff. And, okay, cool. Got that in. And as always, I think tomorrow, while we're waiting for a little intro for how this closes, we got Grid. Grid is hosting the show, I believe. Is that correct, Grid? You're going to be doing his debate show. Check it out. They're 5-minute debates. They're like real fast, quick, fast, and a jiffy. It's exciting stuff. Check it out. I don't know what the theme is, but they're usually a lot of fun. Tyler goes, I go sometimes, and Cassell goes. It's been good stuff. Leafy has been streaming again lately. Check him out as well. It's been very good.
Leafy's been there once or twice too.
Yes, he has. I do recall that, and so it's good. It looks like the chat voted in with 54% of the vote. Cassell gets the chat vote. Let's go to the judges. We're going to start with Grid. Tell me who won and why.
You're muted.
You're muted. Still muted.
Oh, he's still.
Rookie move. All right. Yeah. So,
Excuse me.
I think they both did really well. I think Tyler had more solid arguments and points. It's I don't know. Castle's really good. He really is, and he's it was a tough. I mean, it was tough because I wanted Castle to do really a lot better, and I know he can do make really good arguments. I just think he picked some points. Castle, your opening was kind of rambling. You didn't really have like your three pillars, and I if I were going to counsel you on this, especially with someone like Tyler who will just sit and talk a long time, just nail him down. Just go, point A, item 1, 2, 3, 4, point B, 1, 2, 3, 4, and just with all of your examples ready to back it up and just tighten it up. I beat Tyler that way, so I'm just helping you out there with the voice of experience because he'll just ramble. But this time, actually, Tyler shocked me with how tight his opening was. He had all of the cogent facts, and he just seemed to convey that better. In the first round, personally, I think you really shit the bed there and kind of stumbled a lot. I think Tyler was tight there. You got him really close in the second round, to be honest with you. I think you came back really well. But the opening and the first round was just too much against you. But you both made solid points. It's not like you made horrible arguments, right? Just technique.
All right. Thank you so much. Oh, Lactoid with the raid. Thank you so much, Lactoid. You're coming in right here at the ending. We were figuring out who won this debate. Shout out, Lactoid. We'll get you going. Leafy, you have to close the thought. It's 1-1. Chat has decided Council won. Grid says that Tyler won. Who do you think won? No pressure. Tell us your thoughts.
So I'm going to give style points to Tyler just for delivery, for having examples for the precedents that he was showing. I don't feel that Cassell was able to address them as well as he should have been able to. But for substance and for unmet arguments, I'm going to give it to Cassell, because when it comes down to the use of the power to circumvent government in itself and to erode democracy, it seems that Tyler wasn't able to really address that as well as I would have been satisfied with. So then coming down to the third, it just comes down to whether or not most of these arguments were properly addressed. And I'm going to have to give it to Cassell on being able to defend the idea that democracy is being eroded.
Wow, that is impressive. Big upset win there. Our ultimate gatekeeper has been stopped, but it looks like Cassell has found the keys to go forward. That's okay, though. It doesn't really matter in this sense, because guess what's good for Tyler? Tyler is already qualified to be in our contender series, and so he will be fighting for our first championship towards the end of the season, probably beginning in November. It looks like is what we're organizing. We might even have an in-person DCS match. It could happen. It's looking like it might happen. It's exciting times. All right, I'm going to let everybody give last thoughts and shout themselves out, and then we're going to do something real fun, real fast to end. Tyler, go ahead. Tell us your final thoughts. Tell us where to find you, all that good jazz. Thanks for being here. How do you feel right now?
Oh, I'm fine. I am single-handedly taking this DCS, propping it up on my back, and dragging it across the finish line. Without me, we'd have one of these every 3 months, and because I'm here, we have like one every 2 weeks. So
That's
just
true.
throwing that out there.
You are the Dan Severin of the DCS. I'm very happy about it.
Yeah, like kind of like a heel that loses to like the real big baby faces, but like as a gatekeeper for like the welterweights and whatnot. I'm gonna go with like Kane. I'm like the Kane of the DCS.
Yeah, he's in the championship titles too, so I think it's a good one.
Yeah, Kane's won a Royal Rumble. He's not like a bitch or anything, but he's not like a top dude. I'm gonna go with Kane. I'm cool with that. But yeah, no, it is what it is. It was fun, and I had some fun prepping. Yeah, that's all I got. Good times.
Yeah, and it's only year one. I'm sure we're all improving. Everything's getting better. Tyler's going to be here. He likes to argue, and so I'm not worried. Let's go to Cassell. How's it feel to pick up your first win?
Pretty crazy, honestly. I don't even know what to say, but I honestly appreciate Grid and his feedback because I know where he stands on issues. So it's always good to hear positive feedback from him, and even negative if it's something that I can improve on. And I know my intro is something that I put together, late last night, and I even knew myself. I was like, I have a lot. I had so much to say, and I felt confident in my side of the argument. But Tyler's such a great debater. Even there were points where I was nervous about some of the things he was bringing back because I had to be quick on my feet there. So I think it's just a testament to how good Tyler is, and it's his debate style. And he definitely did come in cleaner, more precise. So I definitely give him credit there. So I think if you lose by one little vote, I don't really think that means too much. I'll take the win. I'll take the win every time. But I think it just shows that Tyler did a really good job on a topic that I thought I should have or could have done even better at. So kudos to him, and thanks Lethy too as well for the judging there. Thought it was a great panel.
Yeah, it actually really came down to literally one chat vote. So like that's a very close one. And guess what? It went to the further left guys. So guys, my chat's doing good. We're keeping a good 50-50 chat. I like it, especially for debates. It's more fun. I do want to say one thing. I don't usually critique here at the end, but I am going to critique because I actually differ from Grid and I think Lethy's opinion. I actually thought your weakest part was the middle. I actually liked the way you set your opening up. I think you did a good job setting up your 3 points, and you hit all of them, and then you ended literally right on time. And I think you had sub point A, B, B, C, D, etc. for each one. I like that style personally. I think it was good. So I maybe differ, and I think it's just a perfect preference thing for me and Grid. But yeah, I thought the middle was the weakest. But what you really did good was you saved the trump card for the end. Tyler spotted that trap right there at the end, and I personally, if I had been voting, which I wasn't, that would have been a hard one to overlook, I think, because you might have lost the mid, but it was pretty even. The openings I thought were pretty even. I thought maybe like 10-9, like or 9-9 kind of thing. Either way, 9-9, and then or like 9-7 or something. But then that ending like will sneak in there with something big at the end. It's not the nicest tactic, but it's effective, especially if you're the closer. So that's something to think about. We don't, you're not cheating, you're not trying. But Grid, go ahead and or I guess you're looking down. Lethy, go ahead and tell us what you do, where you're at, and what your final thoughts are here.
Lethy Waterkai on all platforms. You can catch me every Wednesday and sometimes a few days beyond that, but we'll see how that works out. To Tyler, this was probably one of your greasiest showings, but I cannot complain one bit because you were able to drive those points home pretty well, and you almost had me convinced, even though I knew better. But it was very nice work. To Cassell, there was one point I would give you, and honestly, Grid kind of helped you along the way because he attacked one of Tyler's points and annihilated it, but I had to ignore that, which was about the use of the National Guard and what it was being used for, which, greasy work, Tyler, but damn well done. You should have brought up the Hatch Act at some point. I think that would have been probably one of the biggest haymakers you could have brought up in this conversation, and you just left that on the floor. And I think Tyler would have had an issue dealing with the Hatch Act.
As far as Hatch Act didn't come up. And where can they find you and all that good jazz here?
Yeah, Lethy Waterkai on all platforms, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, all of them, because we're going to dead name Twitter until it falls down.
Fair enough. Last but not least, Grid, tell us your closing thoughts and where to find you and all that good jazz. We're trying to get him affiliated, so everybody make sure you follow and go tune in. He's only got a couple days left to get it, and they'll have it, so make sure y'all tune in. Go ahead, Grid. You're muted again. It's okay. I'm still figuring out this new mic too, so
I just
we'll
do that. I try and mute down so you guys don't hear me talking to my chat and shit.
It's all good. We understand. We're streamers.
Honestly, I don't change anything about what I said in the opening. Or my evaluation. I'll stand by it 100%. I don't think I was wrong at all. I think it's interesting that both of you identify as center left, and both of you did the different arguments as from the same kind of point of view, right? I think that's really interesting. I get to judge a lot of debates, and I just kind of leave my personal benefit. I leave my personal shit at the door, and it's I mean we've had multiple like really like left argument. I mean, Castle, you've been there on my show when people win that people don't think they should win, but the arguments are better, right? So I'll stand by my judgment. You guys can find me on An Unreasonable Man on YouTube and Twitch. I also I used to do Rumble and all that. We'll get back into that later. If you're going to be at TwitchCon, I'll be there along with Gibbsy and some other people. We're gonna have a great time. You're gonna be at DebateCon in Nashville. You have to come by, hang out with us, have some barbecue or whatever food I arrange. There's gonna be live in-person debates. It's gonna be a big party. It's gonna be a great time. Tyler's gonna be there. Everybody's gonna, look. Everybody's invited. As long as you have a ticket to DebateCon. We're going to have a lot of really great debaters there and we'll stream live IRL debates. And you'll actually be seeing a lot of me on Modern Day Debate in the next few weeks, I think, as well. We've been in talks to get more of those happening, more political and social issue topics on Modern Day Debate, which helps us all, right? I'm a big believer in. I don't really care which side of the aisle you on, but this format needs to be improved. We need to be better, and mostly the rising tide raises all the boats. Or you can be like Connor and just play with your dick in the closet.
Fuck Connor. As always, fuck Connor. That's a good one. On that note, what we are going to do right now, we are going to raid It's Justine. She is one of our friends. She's also going to be staying with me at TwitchCon. We're going to be going and getting wild all over the place. You'll see us, Grid, and some other people in the group. We're going to have fun people. So come check out It's Justine, one of my best friends here on Twitch. She's a good egg. And so go check her out. Make sure you'll say hi. I don't know, say I don't know, a booga booga, and then I don't know, put some kind of emote. Make sure that's what we do, everybody. Thanks for having us. We'll be back tomorrow, probably for grids. We'll see y'all.
Yep. See you guys.
Peace.
See you guys.
Thanks for coming.
All right. So I gotta
Thanks
get
for
out.
inviting me.
Oh, y'all be good. Thanks for being here, Leafy. Thanks for coming in
Yeah,
last
man.
minute. Grid, thank you so
Welcome,
much.
dude.
Y'all be good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Peace, yeah.
See you, man.